Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And we are joined today by Chelsea Strong, or Chelsea. What the heck was that? Should have had another cup of coffee. I'm going to try that again.
I've been called worse.
I know, but I'm actually nervous for this one. I've been talking about it all day.
It's actually really funny. I never, ever got called Kelsey. And then in the last year, all of a sudden, that is the number one name, that accidental name that I get called. So I don't know. There's a trend with that name.
I just get misspelling. That's all I get. Which didn't used to bug me, but it's starting to.
Be called Celeste, and I have no T in my name, so it's okay.
That's a weird one. Okay, we're going to try that again. Never done that before. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And today I'm very excited to say that we are joined by Chelsea Strong. And Chelsea actually is a bit of a flashback for me. We've had a couple of people on the pod that I've been very lucky to, talk about who have been influences on my career. Chelsea, I don't think you know what an influence you were on my career. And I say that because, Chelsea is currently the director of strategic accounts at Obsidian Security, and they've been helping customers secure their environments for almost 20 years. She actually was the girl sales boss god at FireEye while I was an SDR there. And you were the idol that we all wanted to be. We all had massive girl crushes on you. You were always this powerhouse who was always in the room. You always put them in their places. You were always number one at sales kickoff, but yet you were just very calm, put together. Nothing fazed you. And I remember speaking with the other SDRs and especially the SDR that supported you, you were just always so supportive of her and of the rest of the team. You're always willing to help out. Your customers absolutely adored you. And it was great just to have that female role model, even from a distance, that could show, even in an environment that could be perceived as a very boys club environment, that women are just welcome, that they thrive. And it was always so much fun seeing you get called up at sales kickoffs and president's clubs and stuff like that consistently as biggest deals of the year, most overachieving on quota. And especially your first year or two in sales, that's a huge influence. So this is really exciting for me to kind of pick your brain a little bit and figure out how you're able to do that, as well as just to say thank you for being that visible role model early in my development, and on behalf of everyone other than me who I know has probably admired you from afar.
Wow. Thank you, Ashley. I had no idea. I think that's a wrap. We're good.
And with that,
leave on a high note.
This has been another episode of The Other Side of Sales.
I appreciate that. No, I do remember you from there, and yeah, I hated talking at sales kickoff, but I'm glad that it was good. It was a good memory for you.
Well, I think that might even be a great way to just jump into it, because everyone thinks sales is this, you have to be this super gregarious, outgoing, love being the center of attention. And most, I think, of the female sales professionals that I know that really have this incredible track record of success, I think most of them are kind of more in your shoes. They don't really like being up on stage. I remember there was an SDR on our team that was consistently number one on the team, and she hated being called up too. We used to make fun of her for it. But it's interesting. Do you think there's a correlation between, kind of that perception and that comfort in those big group environments and kind of the genders in performance, or do you think it's just your personality?
I think it's more my personality. One of the things is I would get asked to talk at sales kickoff and other things in multiple companies. And even at FireEye, when we worked together, they asked, well, can we record you? I said, you might not want to do that. And they said, why? And I said, well, I'm probably going to be going after someone in marketing or product management, and they'll have said we do something, and I will directly conflict with that and say, we don't do that. So one of the things that I do in order to make sure that I'm positioning the right solution for customers is that I work very closely with the engineering teams and specifically the solutions architects, the SEs and that kind of thing, to make sure that what we're positioning works and that customers are going to care about it. And so, yeah, I got yelled at a lot for sitting next to them. In which case, when I presented at sales kickoff, I would have very real life feedback on this works, this doesn't. So yeah, don't get asked back a lot of times.
I think that's amazing, though, you talking about how you work with the technical side of the house. And I think that that's a rarity for a lot of sales leaders. I'd love to learn a little more about, like, one, how you figured out that that's a smart strategy, and two, like, how do you cultivate those relationships and make sure there is that kind of tight connection? Because I know how incredibly valuable that is, but how hard that can be to manage, especially as an organization grows and scales in size.
Yeah, as far as SEs, so I'm happy to say I'm back working with one of my favorite SEs. No discredit to any other SE I've ever worked with. I apologize, guys. But I'm back working with my favorite person to work with, Josh McCarthy, who I've worked with 5 companies across 7 years. And the thing that we've been able to do is actually talk telepathically. It sounds weird, but it's still intact, even though we didn't work together the last 2 years. But, you know, just understanding where my place is versus where their place is, and keeping in mind that everybody has a life outside of work, and being really sensitive to their time. So one, don't make them repeat themselves too many times, hopefully. Two, I'm still trying to figure out how I clone myself into Josh McCarthy mentally. It's not working. Or his brother, Garrett McCarthy, who I'm lucky to work with too. And then third, just don't say anything that you're not confident in. If you're not sure about something technically, always make sure you go back to the SEs and just say, hey, this is what I said. Does that sound right? Or I'm going to say this. Does that sound right? And make sure you're confident. And then they trust that you're not going to oversell.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because I think that's often the worry from the engineering side and the product side, is that that salespeople are going to sell things that the product doesn't actually do, and then they are forced to build. And I think that
or worse, let the customer down.
Or let the customer down. And I think, that careful check-in, I'm sure helps cultivate that kind of sense of trust between these two sometimes opposing, though shouldn't be, entities.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you can, you know, one thing that has helped me as far as working with SEs, if you can figure out how to divide and conquer and save their time, I mean, that's probably the running consistency in my career, is if I can figure out how not to waste the customer's time, the SE's time, my company's time, that's going to be your best bet for people, you know, wanting to continue working with you. So I've gone as far as learning how to do the demos. Hopefully I'll get set up with Obsidian Security to demo their products soon, because I think I can do that. But everyone's going to be more successful if you can divide and conquer. I'll never be an SE. I don't want to be. But if I can get at least the discovery meeting out of the way with customers to figure out if it's even interesting without wasting SE's time, that's going to help them out a lot.
So how did you get to the point where you got that technical skill set? Because especially, I mean, FireEye, Obsidian, these are what I consider kind of hard tech. This is deeply, deeply technical stuff that can be incredibly intimidating if you come from a non-engineering background, which most salespeople do. So tell us a little bit how you got so fluent in this and how you got comfortable not just understanding the technology, but also being in a room with people who literally design this stuff from the engineering side and the customer side.
So I think part of it is, in my past for school, I took languages. So there is a part of the tech industry which is learning another language, which, you know, that keeps it interesting for me. The other part is we were on so many demos back in the day with FireEye. I was employee 50, pretty close to that now at Obsidian. So you hear the demo so many times over and over, and then you hear the consistent themes and questions from customers. And so you don't go deep into any part of the product, and you certainly don't try to get crazy and get into, you know, the bits and bytes of the product. But if you can just do a high level GUI demo and basically duplicate what the SEs have said that you know have gone well, you get more comfortable.
I think that's super, super valuable advice, because I think, look, it's really interesting when, you know, so many of us, we wind up finding, especially some of those early gigs at a very, very technical company, and you don't necessarily have any experience there, and you've got to get it, and you've got to get it quickly. You've got to be able to kind of, and you've got to be able to you know, speak the right language and communicate well with your customers, and you've got to do it in a way that makes it clear that you're not BSing the customer. And I think especially when you're dealing with a technical audience, your prospects often are a little wary of salespeople. And so putting in that kind of legwork and doing the work to know what you're talking about and to start to build some subject matter expertise, even when that's not your specialty, is just a critical component to being successful in a role at that kind of company. And I think it's something that far too many sales people and sales teams don't put in the hard and often monotonous work to, you know, learn the background and the context in which they're really working and operating. I am curious, like, it sounds like you've made kind of a niche for yourself in these sort of more technical spaces. Is that something that you sort of fell into, or was it intentional? Did you kind of fall in love with it and start to pursue it? Or is it one of those things where you wind up kind of getting one of these gigs and it starts to, I don't know, it starts to create opportunity for you as you go?
Yeah, I think, you know, like a lot of salespeople, I think I more fell into it. It just so happened I fell into it in tech because that's the first tech, you know, not the first sales job that I had, but certainly the first, you know, security was the first tech job. Yeah. So like I said, I think that helped. I mean, the money obviously doesn't hurt, but the contact with people, and then the, you know, ability to kind of dissect the tech language and the tech, you know, itself from that critical thinking perspective is what got me into it, and what keeps me into it.
So I'm curious now, you know, kind of how you got into sales in the first place. I mean, obviously you mentioned you had other sales jobs before, and, you know, you went to University of Santa Cruz, got your master's in linguistics, which you mentioned. I'm super curious about how many languages you actually speak, but like, how did you make that transit? Like, what's the story? How did you get from linguistics to tech?
Yeah, that was not a natural transition. It's a little odd. I would say my first job, I worked at the Boardwalk in Santa Cruz, and I was a sales, you know, just a cashier essentially at the Boardwalk, selling people candy. And I guess that started there because I always wanted to make sure I made a good recommendation. I was on the swim team. Luckily for me, I weighed like 5,000 pounds. But I even went so far as to test out, you know, chocolates that were diabetic, so I could give a good diabetic candy recommendation for the poor people who couldn't have sugar. So I guess it started that early, but I ended up getting into sales, I would say outside sales, at a mushroom company, Monterey Mushrooms. Legal mushrooms, not illegal. I get asked all the time. I don't know if it's because I live in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I think that helps.
I don't know. Yeah, but at Monterey Mushrooms is how I got into outside sales, and did that for about a year. And after getting yelled at around the holidays about fungus, I got out of that. And so tech happened because the person I was dating had a neighbor upstairs who was in tech support at Surf Control about 20 years ago. And he's like, you seem salesy. You could probably, you know, work here. And so I started as a lowly inside salesperson covering companies that only had 50 employees. And so that was my school of hard knocks as far as sales is concerned.
What was that like? I mean, Surf Control, I mean, they got acquired a while ago, I feel like.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, WebSense, they got acquired by Raytheon, they got acquired by ForcePoint, so lots of acquisitions. But yeah, that sucked. There was a lot of cold calling. You know, if you've ever tried surfing, it feels kind of like surfing. You try and go out in the waves, you get pummeled, it feels like a washing machine, and then you earn your beatings. That was kind of earning my beatings as far as sales is concerned. But that was where I tried to, I guess, figure out who was really serious about solving their problems and who just wanted to talk on the phone. I learned that the hard way at Surf Control, but yeah.
That's something I hear more and more people talking about these days. How do you deal with someone who does just want to talk on the phone? How did you politely get off the phone?
I don't know that I did at that time. I know how to now, but I was pretty naive back then as far as, telephone sales were concerned. Yeah, I could have, I guess, said there was an earthquake and got off, which I would say, but that's not actually true. We had earthquakes while I was there, and I'd be talking to someone in Virginia. They'd be like, can you hold on a second? We're having an earthquake. I got to see if I have to go. Okay, we're good. Now, what were you saying? He's like, what? That kind of thing. But I don't think I ever actually was able to get off the phone. I just learned through intuition who was serious about hearing about our technology and who just wanted to talk.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And those are the kinds of things that, unless you are in an experience like that, just do not occur to you. Which I love stories like this, right? Like, it's always really fascinating to hear from salespeople about the sort of weird and unconventional challenges they have in the roles that they face. I am also curious. So as a mom, we don't talk often in the sales world about our personal lives. And yet our personal lives have really big impacts on how we do our job, how we lead others, the roles that we play, and especially for women, our career development. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how being a mom kind of impacts your role as a sales leader and how you approach the work that you do.
Yeah, I think before I was a mom, I was pretty focused around what I wanted to accomplish, how I help customers, and with the finite amount of time you have as a mom, especially in sales, you learn how to focus even more. I didn't think it was possible, but a good example of that is I'm very, very, I guess you could say, selfish with my time as far as work hours. So I try not to waste customers' time, like I said, or executive time, or my boss's time, so that I can maximize my time outside of work with my daughter. So what that means is usually scheduling trips when I know I'm not going to have her, or, trying not to do too many dinner meetings, if that makes sense. So it is a delicate balance, that plus exercise, so I don't go crazy. So you got to fit that in where you can. But yeah,
Seriously,
it's definitely hard. I give props to any other working mom from any industry, because it's hard. And any working dad. My current boss, Bob Cruz, has 4 daughters. I don't know how he does it, but he is my hero as far as working parent is concerned. And yeah, it's not easy, but you just figure out how to get it done.
So you talk about how to get it done. Are there any, I guess the question I've got is, how do you handle those conversations? Like if Bob comes to you and he's like, hey, we really need someone to go out to X next week, or to help with this customer launch or whatever, and you can't go because of your daughter. How do you handle that conversation?
Luckily, that hasn't happened, which is why I followed Bob to the 5th company, 5th startup, which is.
I was going to say, you were with Bob. You came over with Bob from Checkpoint, didn't you?
No, I did. Met Bob at FireEye.
Okay.
And so we were kind of pointed at each other, and then we did three other startups, and this will actually be our 4th. Josh and I have been together 5.
Got it.
Typically I don't get calls like that. In my previous roles, I've covered a lot of West Coast. Now I'm covering a little bit more. I have a lot of family support, and I have someone who helps with my daughter. So I do have a lot of support that way. But yeah, I haven't had a problem with that yet. And he's, having his family has been pretty understanding.
So it's almost more a matter of planning in advance, making sure you've got the support systems and being transparent with your boss around, maybe not about the details of your responsibilities, but trying to avoid getting into the situation in the first place.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, for my last company, there's a monthly channel partner happy hour, which a lot of vendors go to, which I'll start going to more since I have more than 22 accounts now. But, I made it pretty clear to my management, hey, I have better results by interacting with the channel partner reps directly. We're already working on things, so I don't necessarily feel like I have to go to, I call it vendor inundation night, because all the vendors depend upon this partner, which is great that they do that. But I like having the one-on-one with the partner reps that I work with more. And so I just made it very clear, like, hey, this isn't a good use of my time, or I'm going to decline things that I don't feel are a good use of my time and take the time away from family. So it's pretty clear up front.
Well, and I think, it sounds like everything else you have said about your approach and kind of how you do the work that you do, it's really, really clear that kind of like that personal and relationship focused approach seems very, seems like it's a core part of your style as a salesperson. And I think it's interesting. I think that the more women that we talk to in sales roles, I think that's very indicative of kind of the woman's approach of building really close, very trusting personal relationships. And so some of these, the vendor inundation nights aren't usually the kind of favorite or most preferred methods of doing business. And I don't know, I like hearing kind of your much more intentional approach to how you build those relationships and really build that trust. And it's also, I am guessing, part of why you wind up working with a couple of the same core colleagues as well. And it's something that we haven't talked about on this podcast at all, really, but comes up a ton, is this trend of sales professionals to kind of follow one another from place to place. And I'm just wondering, like, what your perspective is on that, because it's something a lot of us do, and especially those of us that really do focus on these like key relationships. But it's not something, I don't know, it's not something we talk about a lot, that we're going to follow our people, our colleagues, to new opportunities.
Yeah, I think I do see, pockets of people in security just follow each other. In fact, when I was still at CrowdStrike, Josh left CrowdStrike, he was there as well, and everyone was assuring the SE I worked with, which is his brother, that I would be following, like, oh, she's going to leave. And I might have left, but, I had some promises I'd made to customers and to the SE I was going to work with, so I didn't leave. But there's something about working with people you've worked with in the past, that level of trust and speed at which you can ramp, especially at a critical time like Obsidian's timing right now, as far as cloud detection and response. It's a new space, very much like FireEye was when we were there, Ashleigh. And for CrowdStrike, I was like 350, but it was still somewhat early. Luckily, one of the founders that I work with now, Ben Johnson, kind of championed the EDR space, but still, I would say it's a lot of education that we're having to do as far as just the threat and the gap. But if you're with people that you trust, I had recruiters calling me a lot over the years, and I just tell them, if they actually get a hold of me, don't even bother talking to me, because Josh McCarthy is my technical barometer. And if you want me to even consider working for your company, then you need to talk to him. And so just that level of trust is something that you have to have if you're going to follow someone as a team.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. I feel like we all need our technical barometer in life.
Yes, we do.
I feel like we need to give a little bit of clarity here because we keep talking about Josh. Chelsea, how would you describe Josh to people or Joshua to people who don't know him? I had limited interaction with him, and my biggest memory of him was when he got the FireEye logo tattooed on him.
Yeah, he does. And then David DeWalt, like, to have him show it every.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
It's DeWalt calling up in front of the whole company going, look at his tattoo.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Josh, he is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And he doesn't need to tell everybody that. He's very humble. You know, there's a lot of customers who will try to kind of act smarter, not a ton of them, luckily, but, you know, like act smart and tell people how smart they are. I've had other SEs who like to talk for days about things just to show how smart they were. Josh has never done that. He's very short of words. He sees the business side that the customer is trying to address as well as the technical side, so he can go as high level or as deep down in the weeds as someone wants. His brother Garrett is the same way. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about him.
I love it.
No recruiters, because I can't lose him again.
I don't think he does anything that he doesn't want to do. Recruiters can try. They can enjoy wasting their time at this point.
Yeah, when he left Demisto, I had a box of Kleenex for 2 weeks. I was crying. I was like, oh my God, I have to actually learn how to speak telepathically with someone else. It's very unnerving. And then Bob would call and tell me to change the radio station from the chick music that was making me cry. And turn on.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like family. We all kind of understand what each other wants and needs, and it just works.
I'm just imagining, I don't know if you guys remember that Saturday Night Live sketch when the, I'm totally blanking on what Adele song it is, came out, but it's basically like people in an office all eating ice cream from their own, you know, pint of ice cream while the Adele song is playing in the background and they're just sobbing into their ice cream. And I feel like, you know, I feel like that's what you go through when Josh leaves you.
That is very similar to what.
What's my experience with Bob and what I love about it is I'm pretty sure Bob was the first one to bring you the box of Kleenex, and then as soon as you run out, it's like, all right, that's enough.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Change the station. Yeah, no, it's great. Actually, funny story. Before I went to FireEye, Bob and I, like I said, were being aimed at each other. It's like, hey, you want to work there? Hey, you want to hire her? And I was meeting with a friend at Symantec who wanted me to come over there. I'm like, hey, Bob, like, can I call you back? I don't know you. I'm meeting with a friend. She wants me to come to Symantec. And his exact words, you can edit this out later if you want, but he's like, you don't fucking want to work at Symantec. I'm like, wow, confident. Turns out he was right.
You gotta love those sales leaders who they know, and there's something about calling a spade that resonates with certain people and doesn't with others. The whole FireEye crew was a very direct crew, for better or worse. Usually for better, actually. It led to some harsh conversations, but that meant that you could grow very quickly, and it wasn't taken that personally all that often.
Yep. Well, and one other kind of plug I can do for Bob, although most people in the Bay and all over the nation kind of know him by now, is that he's not afraid to pick up the phone, you know, regardless of his level, to cold call. When we were at FireEye, I think before you started, Ashleigh, he was actually cold calling people and telling people that we were taking FireEye by storm. And the other rep and I, Aldrich, were like, did he just say that? And he actually stopped from talking to the top prospect. This is back when people answer the phone. And was like, yes, I did just say that. And then he went back to selling. So to this day, he and Jeff Williams, also from FireEye, obviously now at Bain, you know, not afraid to help with prospecting.
No, and that's one of my early memories. Is I don't think I was there when Bob jumped on, but Jeff did it a couple times, and I'm never going to forget. Jeff walked in when I was in the Utah office. I came in at about 10 a.m. the day after Christmas on Boxing Day just to get a little bit of paperwork done. And sure enough, at 11 a.m. in walks Jeff Williams, and I'm frantically texting my entire team saying, the VP's in the office. If you can get in here, get in here. And he found out I was doing that and immediately was like, stop telling them to come in. No one knew I was coming. It's okay. I'm just here to get away from my family for a few hours to get some work done.
That's Jeff. He was fun to go on-sites with. I'm 5'2". I think.
I was going to say, these are two huge men.
Yeah, he's like 6'7". So
Holy moly.
yeah,
Yeah.
customers would laugh when we'd walk in, and they'd look at him and they'd look down at me. I'd be like, yeah, we do a circus act later. It's great. But yeah, Jeff Williams was also awesome to work with.
Well, this has been so awesome, and I love. I feel like this conversation is going to be making me think a ton about this, about the power of building really strong relationships and some of the unexpected ones, as a sales professional. I think that's everything you've shared about, building that trust and taking that care. I think is a really important message. For all of us, but especially for sales professionals kind of early in their career, because oftentimes you see the people like moving and shaking and you don't realize that they behind the scenes are putting in a lot of work to build that trust and build those really um, important and kind of close relationships, both with their prospects, their channel partners, their SEs, their development team, like you name it. And I think it's a really important message for our industry.
Well, and especially as the industry moves more and more to shorter stints at more companies.
Yeah.
The days of spending 10 years at a company are probably on their way out. But
they're on their way out.
Yeah.
I think that is a very, very rare story.
It is, and I'm jealous of them. But the days of working 10 years with a couple key individuals who you trust, that's very alive and well.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, and obviously, if we could, we would stay at the companies for longer.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this will be a very long stint, because customers always like teasing. Like, new company. But I always appreciate they still give me the time and listening to what we're doing.
Absolutely. All right. So as we wrap this up, we have a little tradition here. We like to end our episodes with a series of questions that we call the lightning round. These are supposed to be lighthearted, a little tongue-in-cheek. Don't think too much about any of them, but just designed to have a little bit of fun here at the end.
Okay, sounds good. I'm game.
Awesome. For question 1, what's your morning routine?
Yeah, it depends on the day, but usually trying to keep my daughter from interrupting a conference call.
That is real life.
That is, yeah, seriously, that is key. So you've already named it, but pick one person, and maybe it's someone you haven't named who's had a really significant impact in your career.
So it's probably one that is as surprising to me as anybody else, but my dad was a commercial fisherman and really did not like being around people. But I would have the fortune of going with him commercial fishing for salmon and albacore. And the one thing that he told me is you never catch fish without your leads in the water. Sales is very similar. The other thing is we always got information on what's happening from, bars, to be honest. But, you learn from other vendors or partners or customers who to talk to. I can't tell you how many times since I started here, like, hey, maybe that's not a good fit for here, but you need to talk to so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then the last part would be the fact that you may not always want to go out, like get on the plane to go to customers or that kind of thing. And I can assure you your SEs don't, but as kind of the person of the team that's trying to figure out what you're going to do next, the salesperson is kind of the quarterback / captain. And so you just got to really think creatively around how you're going to do stuff.
I love it. All right. What's your pump up song?
I don't have one. I don't really get to listen to music anymore because I'm always on the phone, no matter where I'm driving. So I don't really have one.
Fair enough.
How about this? What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier in your career?
That's a hard one. Yeah, I can't think of anything. You stumped me on that one. I don't know.
We'll keep rolling. What's your favorite sales book or book that's taught you something about sales?
Yeah, I would say the definitive book of body language. That is my number one sales book.
That's a good one.
Checkpoint.
That's great. And what's one way someone could have been a better ally to you when you were kind of starting your career?
You know, sales is not something I think a lot of people get into on purpose. So
Yep.
I think if someone might have mentored a little bit more around, like, there's where you should spend your time, maybe that transition from inside sales to outside sales, that might have been a little easier, but
Oh, yeah.
because that's a totally different animal. But other than that, you know, I'm kind of better at learning through the school of hard knocks. So unfortunately, I got to take the wave beatings like surfing.
All right, what's one way that you're working to be a better ally to others?
I'm trying to mentor more people, and that doesn't mean I want to mentor a bunch more, but yeah, I have about 10 people that I mentor now. So I want to make sure that people are getting better in helping customers more, because they're probably the same ones I'm going to be talking to. And then working with the internal teams within companies, so product management, engineering, make sure that you make their jobs easier, as well as the customers, and marketing.
Okay. Last but not least, I know you're going to have one for this. What's your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Here,
Any specific type? Like what's on tap right now?
yeah, I don't know. I like a scrimshaw, which is from Fort Bragg, but depending on where I am regionally, I like gummy worms, which is New Glory up north.
Love it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been illuminating. Everybody listening, thanks for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. As always, we would greatly appreciate if you would like and share any of these episodes with your friends. Also give us a review on whatever podcast platform that you listen. And of course, if you ever have a question, if you want to nominate someone for the pod, come find us on social, find us on our website, and get in touch, and let's continue the conversation.